Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
A Time for Truth show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for Truth show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, and it's a pleasure to welcome you back to our next segment. And tonight, we're going to talk about some values that seem to be disappearing in our world. Integrity, morality, and really protecting one another, because that's what we do best as mankind, is collaborate, help each other, provide for each other. Sure, there are things that are not perfect, and even conflict exists in families. But in the end result, with communication, we get somewhere. And tonight, we have a great communicator, a spiritual leader. We're very lucky to have all the way from St. Louis with us tonight. And Buddha, if you put her pictures up on the screen, I want to introduce to our viewers Pastor and Prophetess Shirley Page of St. Louis, Missouri, who directs the ministry of the Holy Spirit. Her calling in volunteerism captured her the title of Executive Director of Volunteerism for Ferguson Global 1000, an organization dedicated to Ferguson and St. Louis, investing in humanity, urban development, and improving the community. Pastor Page counsels in prison ministries and is a first responder for 9/11, police and fire, and Regis certified in crisis communications. She began volunteering years ago in Missouri prison system, the St. Louis City Workhouse, the St. Louis City Jail and Prison, and the Department of Corrections of the state of Illinois. She is really quite a dynamic person, much more than your ordinary pastor. She's currently in her 27th year of volunteering for the Department of Corrections, and is a two-time recipient of the Volunteer of the Year Award presented by the Illinois Department of Corrections. And there you see her. She received the prestigious City of St. Louis Aldermanic Board resolution in recognition and commemorating her accomplishments and commitment to the St. Louis community. And there you see her members and the drug education program that she spearheads to protect the community. And you know, we have so much to cover tonight that I want to get right to it, introduce her to all our viewers, and a bit of warm welcome. Buddha, let's bring up on the screen Pastor Shirley Page. Welcome to A Time for Truth show. Welcome, Pastor.
Good evening. Good evening. So happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you back. And, I want to get right to it. We have so much to cover tonight. And I know that you're doing so much for your community, and there's so much you're in the midst of. And as it would happen, when there's something good, seems like things always seem to occur. But what we're going to be talking about tonight, because we'll continue while we sort out her video, is that fentanyl and what's been going on across our country, and what Pastor Page told me has been going on in the St. Louis area. And what we'll do is put on the videos that we have to introduce the dangers and the consequences of fentanyl in our country. Buddha, let's put on the first video, please.
In other news, Plano ISD is offering virtual parent workshops today on the dangers of fentanyl poisoning and just how easily the drug can kill. This after a student there died from it. Megan Mitchell has the latest.
The Plano ISD superintendent sent a letter to parents urging them to talk to their kids about drug misuse, specifically fentanyl. Starting today, the district will offer a series of virtual workshops to provide families with resources. This was important for not only the district, but also Sienna Vaughn's family. She was a 16-year-old junior at Plano Senior High School. Her father said a friend gave Sienna what she thought was a prescription Percocet, but it was laced with a deadly amount of fentanyl. She died suddenly last month. And we've been talking about the recent crisis of fentanyl all across North Texas in recent months. The drug is 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. And to put that into perspective, doses as small as 2 grains of salt can potentially be lethal. And this was the same drug that killed 3 teens in Carrollton. 8 more teenagers overdosed, and authorities arrested 5 people in connection with those overdoses. Well, today, Plano ISD's goal is to raise awareness, provide resources, and have those conversations with families in hopes of saving lives. District leaders are taking it a step further on Tuesday by hosting a panel discussion here for everyone in the community. I'm Megan Mitchell. Back to you.
Megan, thank you. And the Texas Senate, by the way, just passed a bill that would classify fentanyl overdoses as poisonings. It's a key bill in the legislature's war on opioids. If it becomes law, it would open the door for prosecutors to charge people who make, sell, and deliver fentanyl with murder.
To all the other mothers who have lost a child from an opioid overdose. My oldest son, Matt, died of an overdose 21 months ago. I was 45 years old when my beloved husband, John, died of a rare form of cancer, and I was left raising 6 children on my own. Matt was my oldest, then Blake, then August, Christina, John Jr., and Stephen. Matt gave so much to this world in his short life. He was an incredible athlete, agile, a natural. He loved other people. He loved woodworking. He loved the outdoors. He loved nature. He loved to cook. He loved to journal. He loved to read. He loved to work hard. But I think through my husband's death, Matt started struggling with addiction. We tried everything we could to help Matt. Matt was sober for 499 days before he died on the 500th day. Matt's death was heartbreaking and devastating to me and to all of his siblings that loved him so much. But his story isn't unique because overdose deaths are happening again and again in Missouri and throughout this country. We have to find a better way to get help for people who are suffering from addictions and mental health issues. To those moms who have lost a child to addiction, I want to remind you of what they say in recovery. We didn't cause it. We couldn't control it.
Tragic consequence. You can talk about numbers, but when we look at numbers, that really doesn't reveal the anguish, the loss of life and of a loved one, like you see there with what transpired with that young man. And it's really something that is going on across the whole country. And there's been tremendous amount of uproar because, unfortunately, it affects people who are not drug addicts. Why is that? Because you see, a drug addict accommodates to the drug dosages. And what happens is their bodies and their livers are accommodated to these levels of really poison. Because what is a drug but an actual poison? And so what happens is when they are addicted and they are an addict and they're using drugs, their bodies accommodate to those levels. But when you have someone who's a teenager, high school student, college student, that really has never done very much in the way of drugs, and they now take something very strong like fentanyl, the massive change in the shock that the body gets is too great for it to actually be able to handle, which is why so many youth are dying so quickly from this fentanyl and the danger that we're encountering with this drug really all across the country, across the world even. Now, something important for the viewers who are watching the show is that fentanyl is approximately 50 times more potent than heroin. And probably a lot of you know that there's been a lot of heroin addiction, heroin usage, and heroin epidemic, that it's very inexpensive for an addict to obtain, and that it's being utilized across the country. Now we're talking about something 50 times more potent than heroin, fentanyl. When we compare it to morphine, and morphine is the pain reliever and analgesia that is used in hospitals after major operating room surgeries. The patients get a morphine drip. And the morphine, before the advent of fentanyl, was considered extremely potent and under tight regulation, as it still is. But something to realize is that when you take morphine and fentanyl, fentanyl is 100 times more potent than morphine. So you can imagine some young person gets a small pill of fentanyl at a party, because unfortunately at parties, they have a tendency to have bowls, like a big salad bowl or a big candy bowl. And what happens is the young people coming to that party, whether they be high school or college, dump pills into the bowl, which is by itself already insane, because how do they even know what they're doing? And now, let's say someone comes to that party and not even malevolently, just not realizing the danger that they're facing, dumps fentanyl into that bowl. And now some other person who is young, who really just came to have a good time, but under the peer pressure, and we've all been subjected to the peer pressure in high school, in college, in general in society, there's a tremendous amount of the need to not be ostracized. You know, human beings, as human beings, we love to have interaction, social interaction. But now under that pressure at a party, and somebody very young is very liable to give in and take one of the pills thinking, well, it's okay because that's what's going on at the party. And unfortunately, and I could give you more videos, but I didn't want to give any more negative audio visual to the show. It's already drastic enough. That youngster dies. And that happened in Texas recently, and to a very young, very pretty Mexican girl. And her mother lost her because of fentanyl. She really didn't even know that it was happening. She loved her daughter, and she made a video and did an interview to alert parents about the danger. So now, what can we do about this tremendous danger? Well, that's education. There's a statistic that's important to really relay during the show is that if a parent talks to their child about drugs and its negative consequences, that young person is 40% less likely to take drugs. And if we reach youth before 21 years of age and educate them so that they realize the consequences of drugs and more or less really abstain from drugs before 21 years of age, then after 21 years of age, the studies show that only about 1.5%, maybe 2% ever will ever take a drug the rest of their lives. So basically, if we reach our young people, the future of our families, the hopes and dreams that we all have for our children, our grandchildren, then they will be safeguarded for the rest of their lives. So one of the things that I would like to be able to show you on the program is this booklet from the Foundation of a Drug-Free World. And this is free for you at drugfreeworld.org. And you can obtain them. There are actual public service announcements that you can watch on the disc. You can also go on YouTube on Drug Free World, the Americas chapter, or Drug Free World, and you can watch the public service announcements. They're very impactful, 45 seconds. That's really probably the best way to get across to somebody young. It's not really a good thing to try and lecture them or make them feel guilty or make them feel fearful, because the best way is education, but to allow them to see for themselves, to open up the booklet, to read the booklet about the physical and mental effects. The booklets have stories from real addicts, young people, what happened to them, the real story, and these booklets are on every drug. So if you go on drugfreeworld.org, you can obtain, let's say you want heroin, let's say you want cocaine, whatever drug, synthetic drug, marijuana, alcohol, which sometimes in our society is overlooked, but something to realize is that during COVID, both alcohol use and drug use went up almost 50%. Both were very close to 50% increase during this time of stress, of social distancing. And so then, aside from education, something important to realize is that social interaction, good feelings, having good conversations, fun or light conversations, is very beneficial to also preventing drug use, because really drugs are a way of escaping a reality. And the reality is usually one that's negative or stressful. And so that person, whether he be young, whether he be an adult, maybe with a very stressful job, in either case, communication, understanding, having someone just to bounce ideas off of, or someone just to get off the stresses of the day. Sometimes we go through tremendous difficulties in our workaday world. And and you come back to your house, and if you're lucky, you have someone to speak to. But think about the person in your life maybe that doesn't have that. And if you know of someone, maybe give them an ear and see how you can help them to have someone to speak to. There's no substituting for human kindness, human communication, real care. And those things really are tremendous factors aside from the education, because the education was something that was concluded by the United Nations Global Drug Conference of 2016, where all the different methodologies were studied, and the conclusion was education and prevention were going to be the keys. So when we talk about fentanyl and when we talk about what's happening in our communities, unfortunately, Dr. Page couldn't be with us. Technical difficulties. We'll have her on the next show because what she wanted to relay was the difficulty that she's been encountering with her community, with her congregation in St. Louis, with the different kinds of drugs, the violence. I know many of you probably have heard of the crime and the break-ins that are occurring at the bank ATM machines. So obviously, when people are stressed, when they have economic difficulties, aside from the crime and the violence, they're going to be looking to somehow forget what they're doing or not look at what they're doing because obviously they don't feel good about what they're doing. So they're going to turn to drugs, and the drugs will make them more unconscious, more tendency to have more violence, more crime, and more importantly, they lose themselves as a human being. In today's world, where we're looking at trying to heal and give wellness, trying to give a good attitude, an avoiding of mental problems and the conflicts that we have in our world, still the number one is humanity and social interaction, a family that can be united at time during the day so that there's actually a structure. A human being needs structure, and we all crave that affinity. That's why we love holidays like Thanksgiving, July 4th, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, New Year's. We love getting together and celebrating. So let's take what's been happening in our country with the fentanyl and let's revert and let's reverse what's going on. Let's apply some humanity. Let's see how we can have more time for our families. Maybe we should have some appropriations so our children have more to do after school. So while they're waiting for their parents who are working and are trying to take care of the economic constraints, that child can have sports. I urge our politicians, our leaders, to appropriate for sports programs, for dance programs, for after-school activities that are actually interesting and fun for the students. And so the communities can become one again, become whole. It's a time for us to look and to move forward. We have tremendous technology, and with that technology, we need to increase our humanity and our understanding of what we really need: compassion, empathy, and kindness. Giving to others what we would want to be given to us. So I hope that you enjoyed this show. Pastor Page will be on us next time. And, it's said that when a show is very important, sometimes things happen. And I know she would agree with me that it's important that out of this, we go forward, we educate, we let people know the consequences, not only of fentanyl, but of all drugs. Because all drugs cause dependence. All drugs are gateways to other drugs, and the outlook and the outcomes are not positive. Let's have a positive future. Let's have a happy 2023. And let's let it be said that in 2023, drug misuse and death decreased, and economy increased, and crime decreased, and violence decreased, and some new ideas came to the forefront, and we started appropriating for activities of sports, with dance, with recreation, with bicycling, with games, and we started to go into a new era. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. Sometimes in our world, we get so immersed into the technology, into the hubbub, and the lack of time. As a surgeon of 40 years myself, many times when patients come into my practice and they sit down in my chair, they're really not even there yet. They've walked in, but they're really not in the room. They're still thinking about their job, about the expressway, about the traffic, about the things that they have to go home and take care of before they go home. And so I'll give you something that I do. I walk into the room with my patient and I don't just start working. I welcome them and I ask them, how can I help you today? So I suggest something to you. When you get home tonight and your wife gets home, your husband gets home, your son gets home, your daughter gets home, you can say to them, how was your day today? And be honest with them. But mine was a disaster. Sometimes a little honesty and not placebo and not platitudes, but real life and being honest and divulging that it wasn't such a great day, but I was looking forward to get home. How was your day? So that they have a chance to maybe say, oh, you know what? Something's new with Dad. Something's up with Dad. Maybe I'm going to speak to him. And we'll give each other a chance to listen to each other and to discharge the negativities of the day. I hope this has been helpful. Let's avoid fentanyl. Let's educate about fentanyl. Let's employ some human kindness and communication. Until the next time, have a great week. We'll see you on the next episode of A Time for Truth show. Have a very good night.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got. But the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet